Wano is easily the longest arc in One Piece so far. As a matter of fact, Act 3 alone is already 65 chapters. And because of that, there's been a lot of different theories in the community about the different ways this arc could end. And in this video, we'll be looking at 3 of the best Wano theories that you need to know. I'll be breaking down all of these theories, why people believe in them, what are the counter arguments, and whether or not I'll think they'll come true. But first, I want to give you my theory, which is that you will subscribe to this channel to keep up with videos like this one, because I don't really see any counter arguments. But jumping into the first Wano theory, we have the raid will end in failure. For those of you unfamiliar with this theory, it's essentially become the brand of Mr. Morge. I've linked his videos along with all other videos I will be referencing in the description below, so make sure to go check them out for a deeper dive on these theories. As for the raid failing theory, it's been a pretty well-known theory in the community and it's been around for a long time. Mr. Morge first dropped his video on it over 2 years ago, which was actually titled Why the Fire Festival Will End in Failure. In that video, Morge broke down his points as follows. To start, when you look at a One Piece arc, there are 2 things that Oda does very often that kind of go hand in hand. He likes to divert expectations, making readers believe something will happen but it actually doesn't. And tying in with that, he usually likes to have the Straw Hats' initial plans end in failure. In his video, Morge gives a variety of examples, but we do pretty much see this in every arc. A plan with Luffy never really goes according to plan. And of course, the most extreme case of this was Sabaody, which was supposed to be a quick pit stop before Fisherman Island, but that bubble got popped. As Morge explains, Oda does this to create drama, make the story more exciting, good storytelling. And in relation to Wano, Morge believes that the initial plan of the raid will be the one that ends in failure to create that drama. He also points out things seem too optimistic for the opponents they're going up against, which are 2 Yonkos. And along with that, you have Hawkins' prediction that Luffy has a 19% chance of survival in 1 month, which doesn't really line up with the date of the raid. There's also the supposed kabuki structure of Wano, in which Act 3 usually reaches a climax with a tragedy. And finally, the location of the raid, which is Onigashima, an isolated island off of Wano where the people won't get to see Luffy defeat the villain, which kinda goes against One Piece storytelling patterns. Now, when it comes to counter arguments, I actually feel like a lot of people wanted this theory to come true, because if the raid does fail, it would create a level of drama we really haven't had since Sabaody and Marineford, and people miss that. Plus, when you add in all the hype around Wano with the making Marineford look cute comments, it seemed like maybe the raid will fail. But I think the number one thing that's holding this theory back is the question of who's the savior. You see, Mr. Morge has stuck by the idea that the raid failing is not simply Luffy getting clapped by Kaido again, but rather the entire alliance losing and everything failing. And for that to happen, the alliance would kinda need some saving, or at least some way for them to recover and bounce back. It's not like Kaido and Big Mom are just gonna be like, GG, let's play again in 10 minutes. So if the raid fails, the alliance will need a way to recover, and I don't think there's an answer to that question right now. And I think right now that's the main thing holding people back from believing in that theory, myself included. I do think the alliance will definitely suffer some failures to create that drama, but I don't think the entire raid will fail. I would love to be wrong though. Next up, we jump to a theory that will definitely start at least one argument in the comments, and that is Zoro killing Kaido. This theory has become so much more than a theory, it's more like a war. A lot of times when you see this theory mentioned, usually as ZKK, it's probably multiple people aggressively arguing with each other to a point that's like, alright, relax, you need to chill out.
It's only a game. Why you have to be mad?
But today we're not here to talk about the toxicity, we're gonna talk about the theory itself, which at the core of it is simply just a theory that a lot of people presented evidence for and believes in. And for this theory, I'll be referencing a video from my guy Fiji, again linked in the description. But the first point that Fiji addresses is the argument that Kaido has to die, because if Zoro's gonna kill him, then he's gotta die. And essentially he highlights the emphasis on Kaido's durability from his introduction and how he's never been able to get killed. Along with that, many references of needing to kill Kaido from the Scabbards and other members of the Alliance, and specifically there's been an emphasis on taking Kaido's head and beheading him, which Zoro could do. Another strong points are some quotes from the One Piece magazines. The first one comes from Oda after he had talked about Ryuma slaying a Western Dragon, and he goes on to say the possibility might arise that a new legend of slaying an Eastern Dragon might be born. And then there's a second quote from another magazine which said perhaps a strong swordsman that people call the second Ryuma has already been born. Besides these magazines, Magazine quotes, you have Zoro's connections to Ryuma and Oden. With Ryuma, he looks exactly like Zoro. Zoro also defeated him and took Shusui in Thriller Bark. And tying in with the quote from the magazine, Ryuma did slay a Western dragon, which Zoro did in Punk Hazard as well, but perhaps in Wano it'll be an Eastern dragon. The Oden connection is quite evident as well. Besides their similar characteristics like loyalty, Zoro straight up inherited his sword Enma. So the idea here is Zoro inheriting the will of Oden and slaying Kaido. There's also a bunch of different mythology that is brought up, from Enma being the splitter of hells and Zoro being a tiger that defeats the dragon, and also Zoro being the dawn of Toki's prophecy. Listen, Fiji made an hour-long video on this. I can't sum it all up here, so definitely go check out his video in the description. But to round out the theory, another point that is made is the Zoro being a Shimotsuki theory, which I fully broke down in my last video right here. But essentially, if Zoro is a Shimotsuki, he would even have stronger motivations to take down Kaido. So those are the general arguments for this theory, but what are the counter arguments? Well, Fiji actually addresses some of them in his video. First off, he does say that the battle against Kaido is going to be a team battle. It's not going to be Zoro soloing Kaido. Some people also believe that Zoro's Wano plot is tied to Orochi, but Fiji argues that Zoro knows that Orochi is not the main issue, so just like Oden, he will go after Kaido, who is the one controlling all of this. And then there's the question of, doesn't Luffy always defeat the big bad? And for that, Big Mom is there as well. Now, I'm sure many of you have even more counter arguments. Air it out in the comments if you really need to, but please try to relax a little bit and keep the toxicity low. But for me, the main thing about this theory is that it's far more speculative with the evidence it's presenting. A theory is supposed to be speculative, but I think with this theory, there's many different things that could be interpreted differently. Things like prophecies and One Piece magazine quotes and mythology. So overall, I think a lot of the evidence you could definitely poke holes in. That being said, I do think the inherited will of Oden and Ryuma are very good arguments, and I've always said I do think this theory is very possible. I do strongly believe that Luffy will be the one to defeat Kaido, but the possibility that Zoro finishes the job and is the one to kill Kaido, I do think is still possible even with the current events of the manga. Will it actually happen though? I'm kind of 50-50 on. But moving on from that, we get to our final theory, which is Kurozumi Tama. Now before I explain this theory and why it's the theory I believe in the most, make sure you drop a like if you're having a good time, and comment below if you want a second video like this one with 3 more Wano theories. But back to the Kurozumi Tama theory, I'll be referencing a video from my guy Randy Choi, who is without a doubt the biggest Tama supporter in the community. And just like all the other videos, his is linked in the description below. Now in Randy's video, he makes a lot of different points and arguments, but the one I'm focusing on is the possibility that Tama is a Kurozumi. The first thing that supports this theory is the theme of identity within Wano, where so many characters are dealing with different identity struggles in some way, yet so far Tama seems to be one of the only exceptions. But when we put on our detective glasses and really look at Tama's background, we don't know a lot. Her parental figure is the first mystery, Tenguyama Hitetsu, this masked man with wings that has pretty much nothing in his intro box besides Kokeshi doll collector. But ironically, that does actually give us a hint, because Brook later finds Kokeshi dolls at Orochi's palace. So the first part of this theory is essentially that Tenguyama Hitetsu was at Orochi's palace in some capacity and took Tama, Orochi's daughter, with it. Now to explain this, there's several different ways you could go about it. Maybe he was simply just a servant working under Orochi, or a popular theory is that he's actually Sukiyaki, Oden's dad. What actually happened to Sukiyaki is still a mystery. Sukiyaki and Hitetsu also have the same voice actor in the anime, and this panel here looks like Sukiyaki might have been playing with some Kokeshi dolls, so there's some few possible hints towards this theory. But besides the Hitetsu point, there's also Tama's powers, which just so happens to be the perfect counter to Kaido's army. Tama's dangos work on all the gifters, even the headliners, some of the strongest of Kaido's crew. So for such a powerful fruit to randomly fall into Tama's hands, it seems like a big coincidence that needs some explaining. So one possibility is that maybe Orochi had that fruit as a way to counter Kaido. In Randy's video, he also pushed the idea of TTK, Tama taming Kaido, but those are not beliefs I stand behind. Another very strong argument for this theory is the pairing of Momonosuke and Tama, and the entire storyline of the Kozuki clan versus the Kurozumi clan. See, Orochi and Kandro, the two Kurozumis, have been absolutely vile villains so far, but they also had terrible things done to them by the people of Wano. These two people that have destroyed Wano were a creation from its own sins. So that's something that absolutely has to be acknowledged and resolved, specifically by Momonosuke, the future shogun. So what if there was a scenario where Tama turns out to be a Kurozumi? This person that has helped out the alliance, is a good kid, and has been friends with Momo this entire time. I think that would set up such a great conflict, especially especially as Momo's first decision as Shogun, and it would be a great way to resolve the whole Kurozumi issue. And finally, the most important point of this theory is that Tama and Orochi both have purple hair. Now, as far as counter arguments go, you could definitely make many cases for certain aspects of this theory. Maybe you don't believe in TTK, or you don't think Sukiyaki is alive. But the thing with this theory is that there's so many other ways it could still end up working. And that's why for me, I fully believe in this theory and I expect it to come true. Rock, paper, scissors. If I win, you have to watch that video. Ready? Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Rock never fails, man. Rock never fails.